In Sparta, the first thing they taught a child was that weakness could get you killed. Not as a metaphor, literally. And that single brutal idea built the most disciplined society in human history. A society with no walls, no money you could actually spend, and fewer fighting men than you'd find in a single office tower today. For 300 years, the most powerful armies on Earth refused to meet it on open ground. That shouldn't be possible. And once you understand how they pulled it off, it stops being impressive and starts being a little disturbing. Because Sparta didn't raise warriors. It manufactured them on an assembly line that switched on the day you were born and never shut off until the day you died. This is how that machine worked. And the strange part isn't how they became unbeatable. It's what finally beat them. To understand the machine, forget the movie and start with the problem it was built to solve. Because it wasn't war, it was math. The Spartans were a tiny ruling class sitting on top of a population they had conquered and enslaved, the Helots. And the Helots didn't just outnumber them, they outnumbered them by something like 7-1. 7 farmers who hated you, for every one of you. Most societies in that position eventually lose. The slaves rise, the masters fall, and history moves on. Sparta looked at that math and made a choice no one else made. If you are permanently outnumbered by people who want you dead, you have 2 options. Live in fear forever, or become so disciplined, so unified, so dangerous that rebellion is never even attempted. Sparta chose the second one, and then it did something insane to guarantee it. It freed every single citizen from work. No farming, no trade, no business, all of it handed to the Helots, so that the Spartan could spend his entire life on one task and one task only: train for war. The man credited with this was a lawgiver named Lycurgus, and the system he left behind began working on you before you could even speak. It started at birth. A newborn was brought before the elders and inspected. Strong enough, and it was allowed to live. Judged too weak, and by their own legend, it was left to die at the foot of a mountain. Historians doubt how often that actually happened. But that misses the point. The Spartans told that story about themselves. They wanted everyone, including their own children, to believe that here, weakness was simply not survivable. The threat did the work whether the mountain did or not. Then, at 7 years old, the boy was taken from his mother and handed to the state. This was the Agoge, and calling it a school misses what it was. It was a forge. The boys were deliberately underfed, not because Sparta was poor, but to force them to steal food just to survive. And if they were caught stealing, they were beaten. Not for stealing, for getting caught. Sit with how clever that is for a second. The lesson wasn't, don't steal. The lesson was, if you fail, fail invisibly. Never let weakness show. That one rule, burned in through years of hunger, built men who would rather die than be seen breaking. They slept on reeds they tore from the riverbank with their bare hands. They went without shoes, without warm clothing, through heat and cold, on purpose. Comfort was treated like a poison, something that made you soft. And so something to be starved of, every single day. Pain wasn't the punishment. Pain was the curriculum. So let me ask you something. How many days of that do you think you'd last? Be honest. Most of us wouldn't make it through the first winter. These boys did it for 13 years, and the system wasn't even close to done with them. Because discipline alone doesn't win battles. A line of soldiers breaks the moment one man runs. So Sparta built the one thing that stops men from running: each other. Grown Spartan men ate together every night in the same communal messes for their entire lives. The same plain food, the same table, and at the center of it, a dish so notorious it has its own name in the sources: the black broth. One visitor tasted it and said he finally understood why Spartans didn't fear death. But the food was beside the point. The table was the weapon. You do not break formation and abandon a man you've eaten beside every night for 30 years. They didn't fight for Sparta in the abstract. They fought for the man whose breath they could hear right next to them in the line. And then there's the detail almost everyone misses: the one that tells you Sparta understood something we're still bad at today. They banned gold and silver. Spartan money was deliberately made of heavy iron, quenched in vinegar so it couldn't even be melted down into anything useful. A bribe's worth of it would need a cart to move. As an economy, that's lunacy. As a discipline system, it's genius. Strip out wealth, and you strip out everything wealth quietly buys. Luxury, corruption, ambition, the slow softening that money does to people. With nothing left to chase, a Spartan could collect only one currency: reputation, the respect of the men beside him. They took away almost everything most people live for, and replaced all of it with a single question, asked every day: are you harder than the man next to you? For 3 centuries, the answer made them untouchable, which is exactly what makes what happened next so strange. Here's the thing about a perfect machine. Every part that makes it strong is also a part that cannot change, and the world always, eventually, changes. Sparta's collapse didn't come from some great enemy. It came from inside the design. 2 flaws, both built in from the very beginning. The first was arithmetic, the same enemy they started with. Spartan citizenship was savagely hard to keep. Fail in battle, or fail to pay your dues to the mess, and you fell out of the citizen class for good. So the one thing this warrior factory could never actually manufacture was more warriors. The numbers tell the whole story. At their peak, Sparta could field around 8,000 full citizens. 2 centuries later, that number had bled down to barely 1,000. The machine was grinding its own parts to dust and had no way to make new ones. The second flaw was the discipline itself. A system built to produce identical, unbreakable, unchanging soldiers cannot produce one thing: a new idea. While the rest of Greece experimented with new tactics and new formations, Sparta did the same flawless thing forever. And forever ran out in 371 BC on a field called Leuctra. A Theban general named Epaminondas showed up with something the Spartans had no answer for. He stacked his best troops absurdly deep on one flank and drove it straight through the Spartan elite. The unbreakable line broke. In a single afternoon, the myth died. And this time, there were too few Spartans left alive to ever rebuild it. And here's what should make the hair on your neck stand up. That exact same flaw, a rigid system too proud to adapt, was already quietly growing inside Rome. It would take centuries longer to kill them, but it killed them the same way. That's a story for another video. The machine didn't lose because it was weak. It lost because it was too rigid to bend. And a thing that cannot bend can only break. So what do we actually make of Sparta? It's tempting to call it a failure. It left behind no great art, no real philosophy, no lasting institutions. Almost nothing most of us would ever want to live inside. But judging Sparta by those things misses what it was for. It was never trying to build a good life. It was trying to build a hard man. And at that one task, nothing in human history has come close. Buried in that brutal experiment is something the Stoics would say more gently a few centuries later. Discipline isn't the price you pay for freedom. Discipline is the freedom. The Spartan owned nothing, chased nothing, and feared nothing, because the system had already burned everything soft out of him. He had nothing left to lose, and that made him free in a way the rich and the comfortable never are. The lesson here isn't to live like a Spartan. Most of what they did was cruelty dressed up as virtue. The lesson is the one uncomfortable thing they got right, the thing we've quietly forgotten. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your training. The most disciplined system humans ever built was destroyed in the end by its own perfection. So if a society could forge men this hard on purpose, with nothing but cold, hunger, and repetition, the real question was never about them. It's what you could forge with even a fraction of that intent, and none of the cruelty. That's what this channel is for. Subscribe, and we'll keep going back to the source, starting with the empire that made Sparta look patient.